I think one of the things that's really tripping everybody up right now about AI is just like who they are as a creative or as a person, maybe even. And I think the narrative is you're going to lose, everybody's going to be out of their jobs, but I really think the narrative is we're going to be out of our purpose.
It's a shift of thinking, I think, personally. It's like kind of going from this, like I'm building just a body of work, and I'm more wanting to build a body of thought. Yes.
Yeah. Good to have you back. We had such a
Thank you.
cool safe space event, and and really, I think one of the most memorable parts for me. I mean, obviously, started and ended with your experience and your wisdom, and I'd argue even your I don't know, just your empathy and awareness, and some amazing questions and Q&A happened after that we both, even before we talked about it, we're like,
Yeah.
that was something.
Yeah.
So we wanted to, for the first ever safe space and Object Subject Forum live stream, we're giving this a shot. So hang with us,
Actually
everybody.
working. I'm very
Yeah, I know. All of our
Very
meetings
shocked.
and practice, it worked. And so, look, let's just do a quick intro. Tell us, who you are, what you do, why, and just the whole thing, and then we can jump back in.
Yeah. I appreciate you picking this up as well from the last time. As we spoke before, I think we met up a week after the talk, and some of the most fun part of it was at the end when there was a lot of really thoughtful questions. People came up at the end as well, and it was just really sincere debate, I think, around like where people are actually at with their careers. Being there many times myself, so it was like really dragging up a lot of like emotions for me, because I don't think that ever stops, to be fair. So yeah, obviously now being creative director now, the current position is at Apple, of course, but as I was saying in the talk, like trying not to let those things define who you are. We've been on a journey from like a junior designer, art director, CD, managing CD, like different places, different companies, long journey. But it's been really tricky, and it can get really emotional when sometimes you don't really know which way you're going to go. And you connect a lot of those dots going backwards, of course. Right.
Yeah. I think there's a lot already in there to touch on, because I think you speak very specifically for, I think, what a lot of people are feeling right now, like especially where to go and what to do, and sort of the uncertainty. Like you're saying, it's super, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's clear looking back. But that comes up so much in conversations now, like what do I do, where do I go, from artist to studio owner to client, everything in between. So there's just a lot there.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot, I think now it's sort of intensified as well. A lot of conversations that I have, of course, we're going through a lot of change right now too. And I think that it's a technological change, but I think it's also like a big identity change as well. So you either jump on things or you don't, and you kind of, there's a lot of fear, because I think you scratch under the surface. Sometimes it can be disguised as disguised as a technological change, is also like a big identity shift in the industry.
Yeah. I mean, I think, one thing we touched on or you touched on in your talk, but kind of leading into one of the first questions here is this idea of title and what that means in past, present, and future. Honestly, I mean, it's creative advantage isn't necessarily the title you hold today, but the point of view anybody or nobody really should be able to copy from you. And what do you think that means? Because like it's I think we hear this narrative that, at least if you're, I'm not saying the entire world of business is built on LinkedIn, but
Yeah.
there's this
Yeah.
narrative that it's all about tools and efficiencies, but title and identity is connection. I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell me more about what you think there.
Yeah. I think I used to care a lot before about what title I had, or, even like what credit I had as well. Like, obviously we were making title sequences. You see your name up on the screen, and it's great to go to the movie theater and see your name up there in the lights. And then also, I think when you're a bit younger, you're fighting to get out of this. I don't want to be just seen as a designer. I want to be art director. And there's like all of these layers above you, that you're kind of having this aspiration to achieve. And then I think a little bit later on in your career, like at least for myself, I started to see roles and titles as more of like it's to define who you are within a specific system, right?
Right.
And you go from one company to another, and you may be, I don't know, let's say you're a creative director or a VP at one company, and then you go to another shop or another corporation. That title may not hold the same weight. Right. So if you get too caught up in the title that you have and the seniority that you think you have, and then you go into another place where, all right, you're not going to be a VP here. Forget about it. Like the VPs, like it's a different league. So now you're going to now take on another role of maybe like, I don't know, a CD or director or something like that. That's a couple layers below. You may then start to get concerned about that and worried about your own place within that organization, and then constantly try to fight your way out of the title that you're in, because you were one level and you're still that same person. You still have the skill set. It's just you've gone somewhere else and the rules are a little different. And I think if you play into that too much and you take that to heart and you start to wrap your identity around that name or that title, it's going to be hard for you, because I think that you're going to start to get that imposter syndrome feeling and like, oh, like how come, why am I not at that level here? Why don't they want to hire me at that level? Right. So back to what I was saying, I think they're very good for structuring in specific locations or specific job settings, but it's not entirely, you shouldn't wrap your identity entirely in that. In fact, I think it's the sum of all the parts of what makes you who you are. And as I was saying at Safe Space last month, it's honestly, it's all the experiences that you have. It's the people you've met along the way. It's your reputation that you've gathered that doesn't happen overnight. And I think there's so many things that we feel like should just be given to us or happen overnight, but it's the whole journey that it takes to get to where you are. And you have to be able to be adaptable to change and be open to, I think, feel like you can be hired for your skill set and who you are as a person, which I think might start happening more now, versus just being hired for a name, a title. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's really it. And I think one of the things that you've illustrated so well, certainly with this answer, but previously, is just that once you kind of let go of those expectations, it sounds like in your journey on yourself as to what those roles are, it really feels like things kind of opened up creatively, or at least something opened up is what I feel like. I think, yeah, I see that. It like takes the pressure off, because sometimes with these titles, like when you're sailing a boat, ship.
Yeah.
You need a captain, you need the different roles for some amount of system for it to run. But how that boat is organized on a different boat is completely different, even by the same name. So, and I think that's where we all get really kind of stuck, because we're like, no, this is what our director is. You're like, well, it was there, but here it's something different.
Yeah. And it allows you to maneuver as well. It allows you to be flexible.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Sort of next up on our to dig in, what do you think creative point of view has become, or why do you think creative point of view has become more strategic now? Because if we're undoing or at least illustrating the ambiguity of titles, then what are we? And I think we kind of know, but I think that could really undo people's identities that are new to this thinking.
Yeah, I think what I was saying earlier is like things can't happen overnight. And if you really look at what separates us, what separates me from you, what separates those who are listening from each other is like your point of view that's been built up over years and years and years, sometimes multiple decades, depending on how old you are. And we're in this world now where I think it's very, it's tough to understand. It's tough to know what to believe now. There's a lot of content that's being thrown our way. There's so much on the timeline. Like, can you really trust the person that's actually saying that they made something or saying that they were where they were, right? And I think now the onus is on us to create a point of view that's authentic. And I think the only way to do that is to be able to have lived through something, right? Because I know myself, the people who I listen to or the people that I want to listen to their podcasts or tune into their YouTube videos or whatever are people who I've known have had a decent sized history of learning and understanding and researching what they're talking about. But I think we're in this kind of space now where people think that they can just like create something overnight. And we've got into that situation also, I believe, because of how media is, social media. There's a lot of competition. And with that competition, you're not seeing the full story. You're only seeing like the little peak of the iceberg that's above the water, but you're not seeing what it took anyone to really get there. And that is the journey. And I strongly believe that in order to be successful, you have to be able to have gone through that entire journey to be able to like speak confidently and authentically about what you are and what you want to say.
Yeah, what's interesting about that too is I think there's an underlying juxtaposition where I think to do that, it doesn't happen fast, but this culture of overload wants everything instantly, and so everybody wants it fast, and so you're well, it's they're battling forces, and
right.
I'd be curious what your advice would be to two extremes here. I think certainly the younger artists that are trying to figure out where to go. So this is the two-parter of that. And then how do we, and certainly navigating titles at that level, because that's obviously, I'll say let's start there, but I think, the title thing really matters a lot more to the younger artists that's frankly at the entry level of a pretty big hierarchy of, or small, but they're at the bottom of the totem pole. And then on the other end of the extreme, I'd be curious your take on more senior level people that are outside of the maker world and more of the manager or creative leader, but on services they're managing. Coming from you specifically, who came, certainly from all various different places, but Prologue particularly, that like there's not a soul in there that wasn't a maker in some way. So, loaded question, but let's start with with your thoughts for the young people.
Yeah, in terms of how to navigate the whole sort of title and credit system that we have going on. Like I say, I think early on it matters a lot. But I think later on it starts to matter less. I think now though, early on, it may start to become a bit more generic. Like I am looking at people who have skill sets. It's not necessarily like, oh, you've the headline is your senior designer or something like that. It's more about like body of work, body of thought. How do you think? That's become really important to me. How will you fit, whether it's personal project that I'm doing and I want to work and collaborate with some creatives, editors, designers, animators, etc., or, you know, through work. It really matters, I think, like who you are as a person. So if I was starting again, I would start by really looking inside and trying to develop my softer skills. I would, of course, the craft matters and the skill sets matter. And I would definitely right now be leaning towards and trying to understand more about new technology, AI, etc. Right? How can I expand my capabilities and scale? And I think through a lot of that, it's going to become a bit more ambiguous of hiring people for a specific role. And I think you're going to probably start to have people who might be a little bit more generalized. And later on in career, I think also it starts to get a little bit more ambiguous where I'm quite a fan of like a bit more of a generic role, a little bit more of a generic title, because as I was saying, it allows you to flex across different projects or different roles without feeling that your title or without the team kind of putting you in a creative bucket, because that can also be problematic too. When you may have quite a wide skill set, but because you're labeled as something, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to like spread out. And I try to be very conscious with that too. If somebody's an animator, that doesn't mean that they can't be a great creative lead or creative director also. Early on in my career, I wanted to try compositing, animation, and everything else. I didn't have that name or that role, but was still able to go and do those things. Now there's been times when I've sort of almost got myself on track and started to like it a little bit too much. And now I wanted to okay, I'm going to Gnomon and learning 3D, but that wasn't my path, but I thought back then maybe it might have been. But it still allows you to try it, and then you bring those skill sets into the job, and then you start to work on it. Then you have to start to make some decisions of which way do you kind of want to go. And I kind of asked that question back to you as being a business owner. How do you view titles at Laundry, and what are you seeing anything shifting in terms of like some of the younger designers coming up or some of the degree shows that you've been going to, and how you're looking at new roles that you're creating?
Yeah, to be honest, it hasn't really changed in a huge way, but I would argue that maybe I've never done it normally anyways, but like I haven't looked at a CV, I haven't looked at a CV or resume, and I can't remember the last time I looked at one, like, and I certainly haven't looked at role like titles. I mean, except for maybe creative director, but even then, it's usually under more of a very critical microscope to understand if they really have experience in that role. But what ends up the nuance is like sort of decides everything on our side, from artist to creative director to everything in between. And I look for consistency and I look for proactivity. And so you can, like, if I see a clear certainty in a body of work that favors something, and let me just say something that we need, then I'll know. I'm not certain, but it helps me navigate the reels that are a little bit of everything, but risk being nothing or misguiding. And I sound so cynical, but it's not that. It's just that we've gotten in those positions many times. But then the personal project thing too, it's more of an employee interview thing, but it's a little bit of a secret test I do, because I'll be like, what's your favorite project? What's your favorite personal project? And because the proactivity is the superpower, 100%. Like that's, and then the thinking too. I mean, I wish it was a zero-sum game where it was like only thinking or only craft, but usually it's both in some way. So, but I kind of need, usually because I'm on the studio side where we're operating on, consistently smaller budgets for equal or bigger asks. We have to be as efficient as possible. So being strategic about the sort of the specialist side of things help us get to the bottom of it way more confidently, faster, and frankly cheaper. And it's people doing what they love. So
yeah. I think you can tell a lot from the personal project, even if there's just one on the site. And it's like, okay, that you've taken the time to, put some dedication in outside of the job that you have at hand. It shows a bit more of like an entrepreneurial spirit, I think.
Yeah, and I know, and it's sort of a point of view without saying they have a point of view, which I think matters a lot. I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, honestly.
Yeah. Well, it gets to the core of that, because you do, I think, we're all sort of like creators for hire, and we all get briefs. But I think when coming from somewhere like Prologue, where there was such a diverse range of people from different backgrounds, cultures, countries, you could feel that in the studio, that there were different perspectives coming in and different points of view. So even if it wasn't necessarily everyone's spending all of their evenings doing personal projects, coming from a different background alone was enough to kind of influence the work. And so now you're outside of like this bucket, and you've got like a much wider circle of influence, because you're looking at other people's work coming from, different upbringings, even different cultures and countries. So I think that was like a big superpower actually at the time. Because it wasn't just there was a house style, and I think most places do have a house style, but it's very informed from different people's interests and backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, let me dig into that a little bit with you, because one of the things I'll throw brands and agencies into this same bucket, but in my experience, there's probably several types of studios, but for point of reference, there's two types of studios for this question, where you have the specialists, let's just say like the 3D heavy studios that just do 3D, and of a particular, I don't know, like a house style, maybe leaning a little bit more one way than another. And I know I'm being kind of cagey about it, but it's not. It's phenomenal business model that works successfully, and there's places we all love. On the other hand, and I don't know that it's even more old school. I think it's just a different. You have like what I'll say like the imaginary forces or the prologues, where the culture is to tackle everything and all kinds of things stylistically, and there's sort of I don't know, like it's just a different mindset. I worked at film companies, do it really well, where they're like, it's thinking and craft, but there's, I don't know, that I feel like the unifying glue to that prologue story or reference is just that you have people from every, place, shape, and form, but they all have a shared sort of audacity to try the what's visually right, conceptually right.
I mean, there was no other way.
No, that was the build culture of it. So it's well, let me say, I kind of lost where the exact question is there, but I have a really good sort of question to insert in there.
Yeah, go for it.
We'll bring it into the to AI, because it's like a mixed bag of a solution to that. Let's just say that setting of experimentation and openness, just in the sense that, like, I feel like so much of your work and what you say and what you've done and what you continue to do is because of that open-minded thinking. But like AI is kind of creating a bit of an identity crisis in a way, because it's too good, too fast, but also somehow limiting and specific. And I don't know, like, how do you?
Yeah, I think it's a little messy.
Yeah.
Who's listening here, I'm sure he'd have a lot to say about this one. But I think it's a little messy. I think that you've got one end of the spectrum where a lot of people want to explore and experiment and partner. as well. I look at it as a partnership. And where in that partnership can you become more efficient, right? I think you still will own ideas, but I think what it does is it allows you to really scale your R&D. Versus, back in the day, you could be spiraling around like one or two storyboard frames or storyboards, right? If you couple ideas as a pitch, you've only got really enough time to maybe pitch in one hero one or a couple yourself. And then, the studio, you might have like 4 artists on it, and then maybe you'll get like 4 to 8, depending on how long you have. Maybe you'll get like, maybe every artist has to chip in 3. But what I've noticed is it allows you to throw a lot more at the wall. But you can't just be throwing anything. You still have to spend a lot of time up front to decide what it is that you want to create. And then the repetition, and you were talking about like the consistency thing there. It labels you to really go wide and open in that exploratory phase, right? But then we have this responsibility also, which is where having a strong design background or strong sort of creative idea comes in here, is because then you have to rein it back in. You can't just like, have this shotgun approach of, brainstorming a bunch of things, and then now you've got like 100 different ideas, and how you're going to land all of them, right? So you have to have that strong filter to be able to rein it back in at the end. So I do believe like there's a lot of power in the collaboration there. And I think it's only going to get more and more powerful to be able for individuals to be able to really visualize what's in their mind, versus before you would have to probably learn a bunch of tools. Learning takes a long time as well. So I think there's a lot of shortcuts that are going to be able to, it's great. I think it's a fun time to be able to explore, and we should not just leave it on the wayside. I think it's time to get involved in it.
Let me ask you this though, because this is a I don't know, for lack of better terms, an ergonomic challenge that comes up. I'd love to get your take on is with AI. Like, I know there's arguments what it is or isn't, but let's just say for this, it's an enhancement tool of our imagination, right? But I'd love to. I mean, you're in the front line of it, being at working for the fruit, being a manager, a leader under high pressure, intense deadlines. And there's 2 sort of ways AI goes. It's a tool for experimentation and R&D on steroids, but on the other hand, the one that we hear the most of is that it's a shortcut to make great things faster, cheaper now. How do you defend the process, basically, of or do you?
I mean, what's your level of taste, right? Not that I can speak about what we do over there, but like in this have personal projects going on right now, and it is your level of taste that comes into play. Yes, you can do things very quickly, cheap, fast, but I haven't yet seen it be able to execute something that is at the bar of quality, especially in motion, that we would want to put out, or that I would want to put out, or take a team like that a team would want to put out themselves, right? You hit a ceiling, but it's very, very helpful to get you a decent way there, right? To flush out your ideas. But maybe there's like if you don't care, there's some work that maybe doesn't need to hit a specific bar that you can get out really quickly. I think you can get out your thoughts very quickly. You can get out writing very quickly. But I think at the end of the day, if something's not in your tone of voice, or doesn't hit your bar of expectation, or let's say for your whole career, let's say take Laundry, for example, there's a certain aesthetic and a certain bar of excellence that you have. So are you going to now take some AI tools and start creating things for the studio and put it out if it doesn't reach that sort of bar that you have? And maybe you have. I mean, that's a good question. Like, have you been able to get the level of fidelity for a finished product shipped and out there that's fully AI? Maybe you have.
We have,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and to increasing degrees of success, but it's very circumstantial
Right.
to the intentionality.
Yeah.
Um, but you know what I think I was more meaning to was less of the pressure from you as Simon putting on your team, but more really from our both of our clients. Let's just say because the narrative is faster, cheaper,
Yeah.
get it on the first try, which I think we all can agree is absolute nonsense and
Yeah.
demoralizing.
Yeah.
But those pressures do get
Yeah. Yeah.
real, especially with a real tool that people
Yeah.
think can do it.
Yeah. Are you feeling those pressures? Like, okay, yeah. Do your clients sort of expect work faster now at a higher level?
It's absolutely in there,
Mm.
and we proved to them over and over
Mm.
that it's not the case. I mean, well, it is and it isn't, but it's not what people think it is. That are people being the CMOs of companies thinking they're going to get inside out for
Yeah.
10 grand or something. It's
Right. What do you think is doing that? Do you think it's like competition? When other tools got more democratized, right? Like software got democratized, cameras. I think there was a veil that was lifted. I think really early on in my career, it was like such a mystery of how things got made. And then we got the internet, and now you've got tutorials, you've got YouTube videos, Vimeo, people explaining how you do things. Do you feel like it's more competition being able to now kind of execute things that you may have, you may be able to execute as a studio, but now individuals are able to execute on that level too, because of the technological advancements that we're going through?
I'm going to throw in something very surprising about AI. I think the tool is there to do that, but I think absolutely nobody has reached the level to do that as artists with AI.
Yeah.
Like I don't think they're even remotely close. And we work on a lot of like just straight up commercially creatively ready and approved AI projects. And the biggest problem is finding artists capable of getting it there. It's I mean, I think I can count two that like, and it has to kind of be the right look, which is, it goes against every narrative out there. And but it comes down to two things I think we've touched on a bit is in taste, intentionality, kind of all the same fundamentals of creative without AI.
Yeah.
They hold up. And like, to answer to kind of come back to the other question is yes, clients are expecting it to shortcut everything and 20 times faster, but it really doesn't, because they still have to approve it, and there's still teams of 20 or however many, and it's the process is the process, separate from the tools, so
yeah. But I think it's kind of in people's heads, right? Like you see the headlines. The title of the talk was like, motion designers are cooked, right? At Safe Space last month. And that was just coming from like all of the sort of headlines you see, all of the social media trend. And then that can sort of trickle down into, I think, client mentality as well, where they're like, oh, well, yeah, it is faster now. It is quicker to get things. It is cheap. And so then there might be this like expectation coming through, kind of an untested expectation as well, potentially.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you, like, what, hold on, wait, everyone, I want to come back to the identity thing, because I think, and the title, let's just say they're kind of hand in hand. I think one of the things that's really tripping everybody up right now about AI is just like who they are as a creative or as a person, maybe even. And I think the narrative is everybody's gonna be out of their jobs, but I really think the narrative is we're gonna be out of our purpose. And
Mm.
so like we're not gonna know what our purpose is because the process is so part of it, right?
Yeah.
Like so,
Yeah.
but what do you what can you recommend to someone? Because I think between that and then being part of a company or a studio with, you know, with less of an emphasis on title and more on skill, I think it's
Mm.
easy to see how your identity could get lost. And like,
Yeah.
how do you, from your experience, how would you navigate that?
Um, it's a shift of thinking, I think, personally. It's like kind of going from this, like I'm building just a body of work, and I'm more wanting to build a body of thought, right?
Right.
Like thinking about it from the ground up. We can all make things and make images, and if that's going to now be in somewhat of an abundance, really trying to focus on like what is my body of thought and my perspectives, that can really influence the work that I want to do in my own time, and build that up, versus trying to, I think value shifts, like I was saying before last month, right? Like value shifts from things that are in abundance to things that have more scarcity, and having the ability to be able to filter, to have the discernment, to be able to lead and build up leadership skills in the creative field, because I think that's where a lot of value will probably still remain, right? Until AI can start to run companies and run
Right.
campaigns. So yeah, that's where I've been really, I think that's the phrase for me, is like, less of the body of work and more of the body of thought. And maybe back to your question about maybe young designers like entering the field, maybe sitting back and really thinking about, instead of jumping right into the sort of rat race that we kind of have to do, I guess, to survive, but really try to think early on, like, what is my positioning in all of this, right? And what do I feel like I need to achieve more personally to become more rounded and have more of a frame of reference.
I think you're right, but I want to challenge you on that a little
Yeah.
bit. Not because I think you're wrong, but because it's hard to do, and
Yeah.
just in the sense that like I, I feel it myself. There's so many options of where and which way to go, and it's so confusing. And you're like, well, and everything's telling you, well, it needs to be this or it needs to be all of these things. And
Yeah.
you know what? How for a young impressionable designer and creative that doesn't know, it's just like like how do you decide? I mean, that's a hard
I don't
question,
know.
but
I think, yeah, it's tough. You either, I mean, how many ways in, like you're saying, it's crazy, like how much things are evolving very quickly. And you either try to keep up, right? And you try
yeah,
and sample everything and try to master things as time is speeding up and tools are speeding up, and like you've learned something today and then next week it's different, or you're explaining something like how to use this tool tonight, and then we can have a discussion in 2 weeks and there's a new tool. So
right,
you can like go nuts and try to learn everything and keep up with everything, or just like educate yourself on like the bigger picture and understand patterns of what's going on, but try to pick a lane in it. You know,
yeah.
I would like try, what am I interested in? What lane am I trying to pick? Because it's going to, if it's hard now, I think it's going to be even more difficult as time goes on to like keeping up with the pace, you know? So at least for myself, it's more of like observational. Yes, use the tools and understand it, but it's definitely not trying to keep up the day to day. I think I would go nuts and lose it if I'm trying to.
Yeah, you're chasing a
Chasing.
tail
Yeah.
that's never ever. I think
Yeah.
uh, Ryan
Brilliant. Yeah.
Ryan has a really good point here, which is, focusing on impact. I think
Right.
like and I think it can mean so many different things, but it's I think that too, like what is the desired outcome emotionally or in the best case metrics wise, and it kind of takes it out of the like, well, I just need to be good at 3D, and then you do a
Yeah.
bunch of tutorials, and then
Mm-hmm.
everybody else does them too, and which is
Yeah.
great, and they look great, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
To what end, though, right? And I
that's
think,
it.
yeah, whatever we wanted to learn is to what end. You learn After Effects, and you can start throwing typography around the screen, and like. But I always use that example with my team, or when I was back in the day of the designers. When I started to learn After Effects, and I can animate type and throw it around in 3D space, but it doesn't mean you should be doing that, right? And I like what Gruen just said. Like he's now putting more focus on the overall direction and impact of the project. Doesn't matter how you get there. I think if you're able to be empowered enough to introduce maybe I don't know, like expand your options of what you can bring to life yourself quicker without, thinking, I'm going to have to spend 20 grand now to do this, or it's going to take me 6 months. Maybe there's more impact that you can have personally, which ties into like, I think having a bit more of an entrepreneurial mindset as we go through this transition.
Yeah. Let me ask you about. I'm hovering around the same thing a little bit, but I want to ask you about something that might be hard to explain and it might be hard to answer. But one thing we were talking about earlier about AI is basically hard things are more valuable, right? Like that thought that or harder to do things are more valuable, and AI kind of commoditizes art and visuals and maybe. But let's just say it does. But more than it, whether it does or doesn't, it just does it quickly. We've talked about, but I think you've made a career, and I think it very much feeds into exactly why you are where you are, and I mean that in a good and successful and admirable way, by tackling the really hard stuff. And was there a point where creatively and probably in life too, was there a point, do you remember, that where you're like, oh, this is the clicking moment or set of moments or time that made me tackle it? Because I guess what I'm saying is I think right now more than ever, it's easy to take the easy route. And it's especially in this like instant get it now culture. And I'm certain that with AI, without AI, the mindset of slowing down and really examining creatively and thinking wise as much expansively and letting it be difficult and shitty is where the magic is.
Yeah. I mean, we've been given the tools to do things quickly and to create with abundance. And I think you're right. Like there's still such a beauty in trying to create something that is, as cliche as it sounds, like more timeless, right? And that it is hard and it is challenging. And no matter what sort of tools you have at hand, you are thinking about the end result of what you want to make. And not that you deliberately put like, oh, I have to make this project hard. But I think the beauty about design or good design is the sort of restrictions that you put around the project or put around the brief, right? And it can't just be anything. You put your own rules around it. And then I feel like trying to do something that is such a simple concept, like those ideas where you're like, oh my God, like you see them now, even when you're sort of judging work. It's like, wow, I wish I thought of that. It's such a simple, unique idea. And that's really hard to do. So going back to saying, yes, it's easy to do a lot of things, but it's hard to do something that has a really strong concept and goes back into, I believe, like that sort of your thought process in design too. There's many people who can design with form and expression and creating things that might not necessarily have like a conceptual thread, and it still looks really beautiful. But maybe you could argue, like, is that kind of way of designing in more trouble than really thinking about something that has a strong concept that people can relate to, that has a story, right? That's memorable, that's timeless, that can live on for years and years. And when you look back at it, it's not just, oh, that was a trend or a style of that time.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting too is that, uh, Eero Rato said, made a good point about, I think I feel more than ever, and I think you're saying this too, is that it still comes down to good design, taste, intentionality. I would argue, even what I'm hearing from you, and I'll bring this example up in a second, is just the filter too of what is good design, what is communication effectively. I really think back to I'm not going to remember it perfectly, so correct me, and I apologize in ahead, but the Sherlock Holmes title example of Prologue, I remember you explaining, everybody was sort of going down one route, and you came at it with this unexpected route that won out. And what that makes me realize and think, in this AI or not, is that you just have, and I think we as creatives still have to have a filter to ask why, and or question the status quo too, or challenge it, I should say.
Yeah. When you're seeing everything feeling similar, like what's your unique way into that problem? And talking about like your filter for a second, I remember there was a time when I was in art school. I think I was like it was like in the first year, and you're kind of scrambling. It's a new space. You're being thrown. There's a lot of rules that are being thrown at you, specifically with like typography and graphic design. So you're just trying to understand everything, and you're young. It's really early on. And you don't have a great frame of reference early on. I mean, how could you really? It's not like you don't have the experience, you don't have the working knowledge. And I remember being in the library one day, and this guy, he's like a friend of mine, he was like 2 years, I think he was like in his third year, about to graduate that year. And he saw some of the work I was doing, and he's like, what designers are you referencing? And, I said, the tutors said, oh, look at this person, that person. He was like, oh, let me take you and show you some design books. And he took the time to bring me around and like introduce me to a lot of the greats, like, Swiss typographers, Joseph Müller-Brockmann, etc. Armin Hoffman was another one. And they really stood out. And it's funny, like that was a moment when it kind of clicked to me that it's really dependent on what you surround yourself with and what you look at and what are your influences. Because if you're not guided, or if you don't take the time to like research yourself, your work can sometimes be as good as what you're looking at and what you're referencing, right? If you're looking at bad color correction all day, like maybe your work's not going to have a nice grade on it. It's whatever you've set your bar of influence really does come down and affect your work.
I think that's something I really strongly believe in later in my career now, is just the importance of taking the agency to do that as much as anything else, because it's I'm not telling people to not be friends with their friends, but like, what you surround yourself with creatively it affects things one way or another. And if it's not what you want it to do, and or you're not seeking the outcome you desire.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. This is a tough one, because I haven't cracked this either. Like, working with, collaborating equally with teams and community, for that matter.
Yeah.
How do we, because the gold is in the friendships and the bonds and the get-togethers of like the book, like that exact book story at school. But how do we do it now with this remote work thing the same way?
Yeah, I think, it depends how remote we're trying to be. I think that there's still value. I was kicking and screaming going back to the office. Honestly, like I got used to it. It
Yeah.
was nice to be at home for like 5 days a week. But then it was only when I did realize the importance of actually being around people again. And I can't believe I'm saying it a few years later, but actually, yes, there's a lot of value of being in the same space 3 times a week. You know, there's a lot of value of also having your own time on a Monday and a Friday and not having to go in the office too. So it's nice to have the best of both worlds, but I was very sort of anti going back, you know.
Yeah. I mean, work from home's like the perfect scenario for the creative that wants to be social, that doesn't want to be social and just put their headphones on, but it's like literally in real life. Like we want it all. Like it's, and it's so perfect for it. Like it's,
but you do have to be, if you're not in the studio, you do have to be intentional then to use the tools that we have. We have the internet. We have online communities. We have people such as yourself that are putting on events to bring the community together. And I think we're in a time where maybe we need more of that. And it doesn't have to be high maintenance. I mean, I loved going over to Laundry last month. I'm looking forward to Hector's next week or whenever it is this month. Just coming together in a space, sharing ideas, thoughts. And that's probably not to replace being at the workplace, but to at least support it when people can't be.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I know that's, I agree. I think it's, you know, I mean, you and I are in a pretty, they're different, but sort of, I'd say luxurious position in that we're part of a structure of some sort or another where we can go in and do that, right? But I know there's so many, especially freelancers, right, that are like, but I think like you're saying, all of the above, like even if it's online community and whatever, however you can get it,
like you gotta seek it out. Yeah,
Instagram group chat, whatever. Like just like it's crucial to feel connection. I feel like
build your library, build your references. Like I think we all pretty much do that from school days anyway, and it's just like being way more purposeful. Travel, go to the museums, go to the exhibitions. Like it's the only way. You have to. I think you got to put more effort into it and show up for yourself a bit more if it's not being provided in an office space. And sometimes it can't. Sometimes the office space, you're just stuck. You're thinking about doing the work that's in front of you anyway. So you have to, of course, it's by osmosis and by just glancing over at someone's screen or having a chat, going to lunch. I mean, I had a chat with a friend of mine on my team a month ago, just going to lunch, and we solved a design problem that we were just kind of challenged with. And it was just that walk from the cafeteria back over to the studio, and within that one conversation, maybe that's what we should do. There's so much value, and I don't know if that would have happened if we were just isolated or didn't pick up the phone or didn't say, let's go and grab lunch. So
I know
the world's problems.
No, I know. We had the same thing yesterday. We had we came on, Wednesday, the laundry team in LA got together went to the taco place, and we were just talking shit basically, and we came up with this great idea for a reel that would have never happened like if we over Slack or over Zoom even, because like these digital tools create this sort of like, it's not formal, but there's a formality to it that's like, blah blah blah, or then something else pulls you to the next thing. I don't know, but something about just the relaxedness of being in, just talking shit. Like we were like, that.
Get away from the screen.
Yeah.
Go for a walk, have a chat, informal, and that's where a lot of the magic does happen. A lot of the projects that I've come back and want to pitch was because I just wasn't at the studio. And I was away. I was on holiday. I came back fresh. Okay, let me see what's going on. I'm going to go and design it this way. And it's just a different perspective instead of just being locked up in the monotony of, every day having to respond to a brief. Get out of that. I think it really does help. I have a question for you. As you know, you have run a successful business for, is it 20 years, the anniversary now?
Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah. Congrats.
Thank you.
So speaking like for myself and maybe a lot of others, like just creatives who don't own businesses or yet, right? We have to deal with the evolution of ourselves over time, over the course of our career. And there's a lot of what we spoke about today does influence us mentally, right? You're dealing with your own identity and your own personal evolution. But when you own a company, you're also looking at the evolution of the company as well. And how does the company stay relevant as well as you staying relevant at the same time? And I can imagine like trying to push the company or making the company feel relevant, there might be some sort of departures from yourself and the company, and like, oh, my identity is kind of going this way and the company's is going this way. Like, how have you been able to like reconcile that and navigate that for 20 years? Because there's no small feat to be around for that long and to still have work and still be thriving. So how has that been for you?
Never ending.
Yeah.
It's complicated. It ultimately, in the end of the day, I was thinking about this when we were talking about title and role at the beginning of the conversation. What we found is, yes, you have to have an expertise in a skill set, or in our case, motion design, animation, a little bit of live action, right? But there's a gigantic component of this that no one talks about or rarely, is that it comes down to the relationship, like with mainly with the people writing the checks, but assuming you're working commercially, in our case we are for money. Yeah. So we become, assuming we're nice and reasonably good at our job and stay current, hopefully get ahead of that. Yeah. We become someone that they call similar, I mean, to the prologue thing, in a way that they just can trust that we're going to get it done in an awesome, imaginative way. And they trust our thinking
because
and
of the
our
reputation.
Because of the reputation. But you can break that and lose that easily in big ways and small ways. Like every day is a risk that's going to go away, right? But so, like, to your question of like, how do you keep it going? I was actually going to ask you the exact same question about redefining ourselves. Yeah. But you redefine yourself mainly because you understand. We think we understand that no matter how much and how successful anything is, it evolves and changes no matter what, stylistically, conceptually, technically, user experience wise. And so and I still struggle with this, because the more successful you get, the more your ego pops up, and you have to kind of fight it off, right? And check it, right? But the big thing, the big turning point for us, we were an okay studio that just got lucky and never closed. But when it pivoted was when we put it on the mindset of being of service to what we're being asked of us and to the quality of the work. And that being in service of that means putting a tremendous amount of effort and energy proactively into work that's not just what's being asked, like new work to invite new discourse. And I mean, I know some people probably seen on Instagram and LinkedIn all the design posts and all this type of stuff, and it's exhausting, frankly, to keep up. But it drives me to push through making 1,000 shitty things to try to get to something new and fresh, and to try to spark conversation with someone. And no one ever well, no, that's not true, but rarely do people call us because of personal work, but they are reminded of us because of the consistency of it, and that we're going the extra mile. And I think that plays a sizable role in getting this far. So it's but so much of it is just checking and rechecking so many sides of the business at all times. And so it's there's no end. It's an infinite game, as Simon Sinek says.
Do you ever feel like you get wrapped up in the identity of the company? yourself. Like PJ is this identity, laundry is this identity. Like where's the divide?
It's really tricky because you do build up a reputation with a particular style of way of thinking that becomes a trust and safety that earns, frankly, stability, and because of the types of clients that keep coming. And so if you try to veer too far outside of that box, it it throws expectations off by your reputation and your audience that people know. Now, it's okay to do that, but what I've learned is you just have to understand it's going to take a lot of time to make a shift, because it's
Yeah.
trying, you're trying to move quickly, nimbly, because we should, but then you're also like, well, this is the Titanic, and the size of the Titanic is what gets us a lot of trust with a lot of
Right.
basically big brands.
Yeah.
So it's it's a push and pull to try to navigate that.
And you're bringing people along with it too. It's
Well,
not just you. It's like you've got a whole team.
That's always on my mind at the top of the list. Is it's people I care about that have given me more than I could ever possibly ask of them, and it's their real life livelihoods too. So we can't be too reckless, and we can't. And it's also a morale thing. If you try to switch too often, too much, it really can mess with people's identities, and title or not. And so it's just a constant journey.
No, it's a puzzle. And I think it goes back to what we were saying before about like the rush. Like if you were someone, or if you were a company that like was constantly chasing and burning people out because there's this new thing, going around to try different things all the time, then I think that you would probably end up with a lot of spin. So there's something to be said maybe about like the scale of where you are that actually does slow down time a little bit, and you have to make more methodical choices.
Yeah, and simpler and slower ones a lot of the time. Like the temptation is, again, kind of circling on everything we're talking about. The temptation is always to do everything and anything to keep up with what's going on. But what we've encountered is that if we pick a few things and try to do those as well as humanly possible, then people come to us for us, not because of like, oh, you do After Effects. Because the moment they say that they come to us for a program means that we're competing equally with everyone, the rest of the world. And ultimately, that's not how and then you get through it and you get to the end and they're like, oh, they went with such and such because they had a creative relationship and know that they do something that they're looking for as experts. And you're like, well, no shit. So, it's kind of,
You said something important is the relationship as well.
Oh, it's everything.
Again, putting the young designer hat on, looking forward at a career, massive relationship, reputation, how you carry yourself. Again, it's a lot of those soft skills, isn't it? Like that's the core thread for me, that regardless of what's going on in like the whole, sort of identity crisis shift, what we've been talking about. I think if you can really know your values and really build your relationships and have like a trusted, solid network, it goes back to, like what you surround yourself with, not just what you look at, but who as well.
Very much so. I'll tell you kind of an interesting story that just happened just yesterday. We had a new tech client that we were working with, and great brand, and we did the project, and it went good, but it was a little bumpy towards the end because it was for a live event. Live events are always sucky, like schedule wise, and so, but one of my values is to ask and listen, like not talk a lot, but ask and really listen to everything I can. So I said, hey, to their head of production, can you get on a Zoom call with me? Job's over, delivered. What could we do better? and not what could we do better so that I could tell you what you did wrong, but I just shut up and listened for a while. And she didn't tear me apart, but the feedback I got was just nothing that I expected, and really, really insightful. And I can't tell you how many of those times, just from early on in my career to now, to just, if I just shut up and listen, it's like, oh, it's all kind of right there.
Yeah. But even now, how many people ask that? Like, what can I do better? Like, okay,
yeah, I mean, she was
this.
kind of taken aback. Like she didn't know I wanted to talk when I said. She was like, "No, what do you mean?" I was like, "No, like tell me good things, but tell me things we can improve, because we actually care about this outcome, not just the invoice." Like, and it's cool. So we do that a lot.
It's good because that could be the difference between losing a job or continuing on a project, right? It's just,
and it was, and we built up more trust with her too, because at the end of the project, she's like, it sounds like you guys kind of faded away, and it was like for audio, and I was like, no, we didn't. What we were doing is we were doing audio custom because we wanted to give you an exquisite experience. And she's like, oh my God, we thought you guys just didn't want to talk and were avoiding us. That makes perfect sense. I was like, no, it just totally just took time to make it exceptional. And it totally unpacked the narrative, and I could tell she's like, oh, these guys care. Like, but it was just like, she just didn't know. And it was interesting to simply ask, like, how, like, humbly, like, how do we, because I care, because it's like, how you get there sometimes matters as much or more than what you make creatively,
Yeah. And I feel like there's, I don't know, with the sort of pitch culture that we've been in, or where I was and what still does exist, there's like this tendency there's a lot of like throwaway design, and not so many kind of clients or brands willing to like actually work with a design company to solve a problem, right? And I think I think it was Pentagram does it, maybe they still do, maybe not, but accept work if you're gonna come to us and stick with the problem, and we'll solve it, but we're not really going to be pitching, because there's a lot of waste that does happen. And I believe that if someone just stays a little bit longer to explain versus just getting an abundance of work and just saying, I'll go with that person, right? Over the course of time, if you do stick with one studio, you could probably work it out and get pretty far in the process and solve the design problem. I'm not saying like that's the answer for everything, but maybe a little bit more of that wouldn't be a bad thing, I think.
I got a question for you now, I think, because you've been on every side of it, and now you're on the I mean, I know it's not, but like client side ish, it could be said. How do you see studios, I guess, and maybe artists from that side of it different than being on the studio side, or how do you see them having changed and evolved since even you started, or 10 years ago or something? It's a very general question because every studio kind of works differently, but
I think what I see being on, like, having experienced both sides, is I understand why things take a while. Like working in a studio design shop, you can get a little frustrated. It's like, why is feedback taking so long? Why am I getting this kind of feedback, on a Friday night or whatever? And so it does give you a bit more of a well-rounded perspective of how things run on both sides. Having been on the design studio side, like understanding how things are made, I think is really important. And I don't see so much of a shift of, like, let's say you're working with a design and production company, the process still feels same, just observing the process. But to be able to have the knowledge of how something gets done from A to B makes your job easier on brand side to understand, like, all right, if I ask this question, or if I give this piece of feedback, I know the implications of what that's going to do to that team that I'm asking that of. So you have to sit with that a little bit sometimes. It definitely is. It makes you be way more buttoned up with your feedback, because you're not just, I'm no longer like a creative director at a studio, really being in control of like the creative output. That's my responsibility from, let's say, the owner of the company. Oh no, you have to make sure that this leaves the shop really well, and then you're taking the input from your design team, animators, editors, etc., to make the job better, right? If you work that way, I like to be inclusive of other people's ideas, but being on brand side, you're like, okay, if I ask this is going to affect editorial, it's going to affect animation, it's going to affect design. You know what? I should like really make sure that I'm buttoned up at the beginning, so I'm guiding this process along, right? So yeah, to answer your question, I don't see much has changed necessarily with who we might work with, but I feel like I've changed or just become more hyper aware of what my words mean and say. And, you know, generally a company wants to kind of please the client in a way. And you don't want to be dragging people through your mess if you haven't figured out what you want. So you have to be very clear with the feedback. And because if you say something, they're going to try and probably figure it out. And that might, so you got to make sure that that's the right thing that you want to try, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Let me ask you this, like it's a tough one, but we've found success with what I'm about to say carefully, but do studios or artists alike need to agree with all the notes and do them from the client?
That's a tricky one.
It's a very tricky one.
No, like if I put my studio hat on like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I'd, you know, you have that little bit of a, you know, you're talking about like, no, it should be like this. This is what it's meant to be. Right. So I think there's a bit of a push and pull and tension there. I like it if someone has a really strong point of view that you've hired to work on the project. I think that's great. And there's some people that are really good at that, and some people that may have a point of view, but your point of view is not, you know, it's not necessarily right for that outcome or for the customer, right, and the end user. But I think it's a bit of a game there. You can get really dialed in with like your feedback and say, no, I want it exactly like this. And I think sometimes if it's really like more technical fixes over sometimes creative, because there's things that just need to be fixed because it's not there. And then there's things that are more on the creative side where, okay, let's have the debate around that because you have a really strong point and you have a good idea. And I think that makes, that makes your job interesting when you've kind of hired the right people to push you that way and like to stand up for their ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, because this is less sort of creatively glamorous, but a trap that I've seen, and it's not intentional, but a trap that I've seen come up a lot is doing all the notes that keep coming and doing them and literally noting it to death. And then the outcome sucks at the end. And they're like, well, why does it suck? And you're like, well, all the extra notes that you gave us and feedback, like, here we are. But
diluted it.
Yeah, very. Yeah. But, you know, at the end of the day, they're not going to blame themselves.
Yeah.
So that's that's where we have to be, I think, but, you know, Sherpas of sorts for design to, you know, not know when to kind of push back and how and why.
Yeah, yeah. And you might lose some points by pushing back. You might lose some reputation points with your client or your boss, like pushing back
But
a
I've
little
said
bit,
it to
right?
clients, like, I'm
But
like, this isn't a creative thing. Like, if we keep
yeah,
going on this, it's going to suck and you're going to blame me and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
going to be
yeah,
shitty. And I don't want that for you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think it's good. It's good to do it. It's good to do it. I mean, I do it, and someone just wrote calculated. I was going to say the same thing. It's calculated. All right. If I push back here, I'm going to probably lose some points because someone's not going to agree with me. But if I really strongly believe in the creative, why not? I'm going to roll the dice and I'm going to push against the wall. And if it backfires, it backfires, right?
yeah.
But you have to do, you got to try and stand up. And what hills are you trying to die on, and what battles are you trying to, get into, and what's not worth it?
So much of it is about communication too. And sort of the
Mm.
why is,
Yeah.
what that we have the same shared intention and communicating that.
Yeah.
And it definitely takes the, the, the edge off of it. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. What do what do you look like? What do you look for, in designers now? Has it changed? Like people who you would hire, whether they're contracting or full time, is
Yeah,
that sort of shifting for you?
it has based on things I'm interested in, frankly, but also just in terms of where we find ourselves just sort of serendipitously. But oddly enough, and I know what I don't know. I know that every studio is different and in a different business vertical. So this is by no means a statement of the entire industry, but I look heavily right now, at least towards specialists, both technically but also design wise. Also, I look at a lot of like I can't find them, mind you, but I look for a lot of like very timelessly trained graphic designers, particularly around like type and like Joseph Muller Brockman, like that world.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like now is like I think they're all working at the brands. Basically, it's like trying to very difficult to come across, but something that I mean that's also a very washed out way of saying just like taste is what we look for a lot right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any like when you've sort of chosen, you've got like the team around you, and like I've said, like you've been able to keep things going for a while, are you conscious of how people on your team, going back a little bit to the identity thing, like are able to like deepen their own voice, like their own design practice, and then maybe then sort of like looking to like graduate and go off on their own? Like, how do you feel like a studio can like help support that?
I think we could always do better, but we do a very good job of putting not just our creatives, our entire team forward is sort of it's sort of like leaders eat last mentality, and even in terms of the types of projects, and try to really throw them into the most creative stuff we possibly can constantly, so that because I mean, they're creatives, we're creatives, they'll get bored easily or unsatisfied easily. So it's and then I think different than maybe the beginning of my career, we bring a certain amount of gentleness to that, and as best as we can to like encourage, not criticize, and set a safe space for that to kind of go, because that's where, young or old, our culture is a little different than it was before, where you could throw some hard punches or get those from an art director 15 years ago, but now you do that and it's just like it's just not
Different
the same.
world.
And that's a different world, and that is okay. So and it's friendly, it's way more pleasant. Like no one wants to be around that. So it's
the hostility.
So it's not my, there's the business side. So I get, sometimes I panic, but I have to hold to the line that like to basically nourish, support, and literally feed into any one of our teammates wanting to move on and do their own thing or go somewhere else. And like, just it's like the fact of life. So it's like, why not help support that as much as possible?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny because where and this is my own personal weakness where it falls apart and I get a little more tense is when I basically overcommit and that happens where I just am on too many things and suddenly I'm like, nah, why is it, we
Yeah.
got to make it, like, and that's just, but that's usually any type of like slightly vibey stuff is usually because of something I have not done right. It's basically
I
what
mean,
it
that's
comes
a
down
whole
to.
other conversation about saying no, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah. 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 It's very, very easy to get caught up in a lot of that.
It's super easy. You don't even, it happens right under your nose and eyes, and you don't even know it. That's one of those weird things where you're like, oh, 3 months, 6 months, 7 months are gone by. Like, how did I'm on all these troublesome asks. How did I even get here?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it goes back, and I'd be curious to see what you think about this, but it goes back to even the young designer of like, understanding and knowing and deciding your position, because then you have values to check against too, so that you like can be like, no, that wasn't either the goal or who I set to be, and then you can kind of filter a little easier. But if you're kind of and I was too late. I was born in California. I'm too laid back. I'm like, yeah, let's just go with it. And then suddenly you're like, what?
In
You're
trouble,
lost,
drowning. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see.
Roy has a good Voxbox that Ollie, yeah.
What do I think is a good creative director?
Is personality more important than skill set?
I think it's all of it. I think it's we have a great creative. One of our creative directors he's the nicest human being ever, but he's also so technically and creatively proficient that he's not just like, I'll do it when I see it, make it organic or any of that. He can really get in there and articulate it, and I think that for me at least that dance is that balances everything.
I think for me it's clarity, right? Like of course their personality is massive. Like we all know there's like fear-based management, right? That is quite unsustainable. It works for a certain amount of time, but I think it's quite unsustainable because you either lose people because people are just not going to put up with it, or you burn people out. But through it, you can get good work done. It's not to say that it doesn't yield fruit, but it's at a great cost. And I feel like, the more I sort of go on and on, it's like clarity is like really, really important. Saying less, listening more, as you said before. Just because you're in a position of like a CD, it doesn't mean you have to be talking everyone's ears off to death and like just putting, being a dictator and saying this is exactly how it needs to be. But I think there's something to be said about being clear with your delivery and clear with your feedback and being able to make a decision. I was listening to this audio, but I think, what is it called again? It's the 38 something of war. I can't remember exactly now, but it was talking about like someone should be able to make a decision within 7 breaths. Right. And now there's a range of decisions. There's like massive decisions that have like serious business implications that, you need to like go home and sit on and think about. But there are decisions in the room that I think if you train yourself to be able to make that decision so the team knows which direction to go in after they've left the room, and they're not trying to second guess what you said or decipher some kind of, ambiguous piece of feedback. That's important, right? Because that keeps things moving.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to the clarity, like you're saying too, and within, I think the clarity is partners with intentionality. Those two play together, and because I find when that's set up clearly both for clients and artists alike, then when you have feedback and it's clear, there's usually they can connect the dots to the rationale why,
Yeah,
and
right.
it makes it less of a like, well, just tell me what to do, what to color to
Yeah,
paint it, what keyframe to set, like, because
yeah,
that's no good for anybody either. Like,
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I'll add to that. Just riffing off what you said, it's being able to be in a position where you are trying to find interesting work for your team, but you're also finding ways to get out of the way,
very much so.
and not trying to be overbearing or all in it, all in the weeds. Like being the art of being able to get out of your team's way, beat the path down so that they have the path to actually walk on, but then get out of the way and let your team grow. I think that's an important part of it.
I'm not this very well or perfectly, but I think what makes a really good creative director too is one that knows how to adjust and create different sandboxes for different types of artists, unique to them to
100%.
thrive.
Yep. Yeah,
I
yeah.
like to not like. I think it's easy for either lack of experience or efficiency to just do it one way, but artists all spawn differently,
Yep.
and to know the difference
Yeah.
and navigate that to get,
Yeah.
well, you usually get way better
Yeah. Yeah.
collaboration and better
Yeah.
work and
Yeah.
happier everybody.
People care about different things.
Yeah, and personalities too. Like,
Yeah.
if you're not going to change someone's personality, like,
Yeah.
but nor should we.
Yeah, no, exactly, because then that's the uniqueness, and that's what we
Yeah,
should carry through. And
that's why you hired them, or at least are
yeah,
partnered with them. Like, that's
yeah.
you know. So it's
Yeah.
But
But
again, the fast-paced world that we're in
yeah,
obviously breaks a lot of that down.
yeah.
Often.
We all have rough edges, depending on
Yeah.
where you go. Some of those need to be smooth. We need to smooth our own rough edges out a little bit sometimes. And, you can guide, your team as well. Cause I think we all have our blind spots. And I think I have my own. So, being able to listen again and sort of carve down some of those areas, I think that, can get in we can get in our own way as well. So
was that a process for you to learn to do that? Like, I think film can be, I'm not bad mouthing, I just mean in general, it can be very aggressive or not aggressive, but intense,
yeah.
versus, tech, which maybe isn't. Like, it was.
Yeah. There's an intensity that you come out of film and go into like tech with. And I think, depending on where you've been, it's like the pace is intense and you want to get stuff done. Like, why can't I get this done now? Like, let me just go in the garage and like shoot this thing, or I want to spin up this project because I believe that this will, make this happen, or blah, blah, blah. So I think there's that sort of intensity of it, like entertainment colliding with technology, which is actually really interesting because technology is not necessarily that fast. We're building AI tools now at speed of light, but like in general, to move something through either a large organization or like a technology sort of centered space, it's quite different from entertainment. I think there's two different kind of ways of thinking, and that can be definitely early on. That was a bit of a struggle for me, for sure.
I mean, I've gained a significant amount of humility seeing getting a clear glimpse of direct to brand, where you get to see kind of a bit more behind the scenes to understand just how much work, people, approval, kind of the whole gamut to get to a project that a studio starts. Like, you're like, wow. Yeah, I think this was actually at our lunch that we shared together. Can you talk a little bit more about how to? I'm going to paraphrase this, but we were talking a little bit about that and how much, and your response to me, like, how do you get a good idea to stick, basically? And you described it in a way where you're like, hey, you kind of just have to stick with it and keep bugging not bugging, but keep on people to not let it die. And I thought that
Yeah.
was really fascinating.
Yeah, when it works. Yeah. I think it goes back to like having discernment, and you have to, if you feel like you in your gut, I think a lot of us can relate to it. Like when you feel like you have a good idea, and everything's sort of clicking, and you get consensus, like people around you are like, that makes sense. Like we should do that. Right. Depending on where you are, like ideas are very fragile things. I think it's like Johnny Ive mentioned that as well, right? So to be able to carry that idea all the way through all the people and checkpoints that, you know, have to agree, your clients, right? I'm sure there's multiple levels of clients. Once you send a concept in, that concept has to be approved all the way up, and you're not really seeing a lot of that approval process, but you'll get the notes. But it's really just trying to make sure that you've understood like why you are making it, which is why I tend to like kind of shy away from ideas that are just form based. Like if something has a concept and there's a spine to it, then it's easier to defend sometimes than something that doesn't necessarily have an idea, right? Because then all you can do is put it up on the wall and defend it by the color or the shape or its movement and blah, blah, blah. And it has its place. But I think in my experience, it's been easier to defend work that has a sticky idea that people can relate to and see, or they haven't seen that thing before. So is it worth rolling the dice? Right. And sometimes being that squeaky wheel, it can work for you, and it can, like I was saying before, lose you some points, like trying to be annoying about it and trying to get your idea through. But, you know, why are we here? We have to try.
Yeah. And I mean, that's it. I think.
Yeah. And doing what you said as well, it's like asking, how can we make this better? Like, I think there's something here, and maybe you're not seeing all of it, but actually listening to, you know, some of the feedback and incorporating back into that idea, because you do also have to, and I think this is another important thing that helps you defend the work, is it right for your audience, right? And why is it right for that audience as well?
Yeah, I used to make a joke of this, and I still do, but there's so much more truth to it than not. But I had this running joke at Laundry where I was like, whatever you're pitching or whatever you're proposing, tell them it's their idea, and we just brought it to life. It has to be
their idea.
But really, it's not even a joke. Like if it is, or and like I kind of like learned, I was like, well, of course they don't know how to make it look good. That's why they're calling us. But they have an idea, and it's actually rare that they're so bad at their job that they don't have a rationale or a deep understanding of their brand. So you're like, okay, my job is to take that and make it good and real and have a reason. And then you're like, well, and then we're talking about it, and they, you know, it's interesting.
Now you hit the nail on the head. It's like if it's not their idea, you've got a way less chance of getting that through.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it's like, of course, you get the brief, it's your idea, but based on a very informed strategic brief most of the time, right? Or somebody's been working on a film for years, or working on a video game for years, or, you know, the director's been living with this commercial brief for a few months. If you can kind of make it be where it's their idea too, and they have ownership in it, and you're not just telling somebody this is what it needs to be. And that's a whole sort of like tricky skill set in itself as well, right? Because you can get really over passionate about something you believe in, but if someone is just flat out like, no, it could be just dead in the water.
Well, I have a wild story of how I saw that. I experienced that tie-in with AI. We were on a commercial project that was an all AI output, and the renders, the style frames, the renders came from the ad agency ECD, and they were, in my mind, very good. Like not because they were good AI renders, we know that's going to be good, but the
Yeah.
taste and the decisions were
Yeah. Spot.
and it was a really cool way to collaborate because it was like took it out of the us versus them
Mm.
dynamic, and we said, look, you have it. We don't
Yeah.
need to keep look dubbing this. Like,
Yeah.
now
This is
let's build a meaningful story with emotion and stakes, and
yeah.
then we'll turn it into video and all that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it was a kind of a holy shit moment of like, oh, that that that's a way of collaborating, like
Mhm.
with a tool. And it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna chalk that up as rare, but it was there.
Sure. Yeah. But it's nice when it happens. Like, as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you're able to move your ego out of it and see, like, you know what, this is really good. We should just like elaborate on this here as well.
Good is good. Like,
Yeah.
I'll take it. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to have yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel what do you feel like is next for you in terms of like how things are going in the next year or so? Like what's kind of next for laundry and next for PJ, you know, in this whole big world of change and evolution? Or are you kind of looking at it like, you know, don't feel too sort of threatened by it and we're just going to keep evolving?
I feel less and less threatened by the day, the deeper and
Yeah.
deeper I get into it. I
It's good.
think for me is, I always want to do cool shit like everybody, like cool creative, but my North Star at this point is relationships. Like, I'd rather work with someone that I connect with and vibe with,
Yeah.
or have already
Yeah.
first. And lucky enough, I haven't been too disagreeable to have enough of them to keep me busy. Friends, and that's kind of like, even if it's hard, good vibes are it for me at this point. Because everything else tends to fall into place from there. Like, and we're good enough at pitching ourselves and dealing with even new business and strangers that we get along with people and know kind of how to turn it on.
Yeah.
But
City's big enough, right?
yeah, but again, it's just sort of like, because I don't mean it this scientifically, but like, if you connect with someone, there's gonna be intrinsic trust that you're always chasing anyways, even if you're really good.
Yeah.
And so I rather start with where it's usually ends first, and then see where it goes. And
Yeah.
it's hard sometimes. Sometimes it's easy, but it's certainly more satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something that we didn't touch on, and maybe this could be sort of like one of the sort of last things we get into, but putting myself back in maybe 10 years ago, when I was going through like the creative transition of going up, like worrying about my title, and sometimes like 10 years was a long time to be able to kind of lose yourself a little bit. Kind of lose who you are within the company structure and kind of figure, like, can I see a future for myself here? Or get distracted by maybe other disciplines that you want to explore. And I think that that's quite a common thing sometimes, is like when you can maybe be under a studio or be at a company and lose this like sort of sense of self and start to be disconnected from who you are creatively. And I just wonder, like, how do you sort of set conditions, I suppose, or sort of look at the work that you guys are doing and look at the team that you have to try and sort of maybe prevent that, or at least be aware of it, that can happen?
Oh, I'm very aware of it. The past couple of years, I've been a little bit of an identity crisis with that. I'll admit, like, I don't pretend that it's rosy, just in the sense that, like, when it's my job, it's my duty to put my personal creative aside in large part in service of my team, even my partner, my other directors. Like that, it's them first in my mind. And I vocally said it. Whatever you guys don't want, I'll pick up. But at the same time, it's a very difficult position because then you add in enough sort of chaos and pressure, and you're like, whoa, what am I then? Like, who am I? What's even my identity? And because we always for some reason want to know what our identity is. Like that's some weird thing that with humans, right? And
I think
so
that's why we're getting pretty shaken now, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly. I think it's, and what's my purpose, right? And so it's, I battle with it. Like it's really, really, really hard, and it's more intense on some days than others. But I'm not out of the woods in any way. But so I wish there was. I wish I had the answer. I mean, what I'll tell you is recently one thing that it kind of goes back to the friendship thing, where I was like, okay, when do I feel like when do I feel like it's business? It's always battle, but like when do
Yeah.
I feel like kind of safe, and when is it work that I feel like a connection with or believe in as much as you can with a commercial client? And for me, that ended up the position I narrowed it down to was branded tech work. That's the work I do a lot of. That's where the people are the nicest. It's where I can have these honest dialogues. It's where it just feels, and so but even within that, the complicated part is that my partner or other leaders within laundry like other things too. So it's
Right.
like,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
so you have to do your best to service and all of it. So it's
And
it's always
balance. Yeah.
it's a balance.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be I mean, same question back to you. I think working at arguably one of the most design forward and biggest brands certainly in the world, it would be easy to get still lost in the shuffle, I would think.
I think you can. You definitely can, because places like that are huge. But I think you have to be really willing to be adaptable to changes, because it doesn't matter where you are. I mean, you could be at a small shop or a large company. Change happens and can happen really drastically, right? Especially when, I mean, even if it is yours and it's something that you've built yourself, then you're sort of having to adapt to change from external forces. I think when you're within a place, you are sort of having to adapt to internal forces and external forces at the same time. So, being able to be malleable and being able to adapt, I think, is one of the stronger skill sets that I look for and that I try to sort of nurture within myself. Because when change happens, you kind of get taken off guard, or wait, I thought I was doing this and I thought this was going to go on for like 2-3 years. But now it's like, you know what? That's no longer a priority. Now you're kind of, this is the priority now, and we have to do this. So you can run into that sort of feeling of being lost if you get so overly attached to something, and then that something gets taken away. Just like if we get so attached to our roles, and then those roles get very ambiguous and start to dissolve, you have to then start to like find your way in the dark a little bit as to like, who am I now? So if we start working on that, like, who am I, and articulating like, being able to articulate why I think like this, or why I'm doing this, or this is what I feel like I am about, or what my purpose is. And then I think that at least gives yourself like this sort of spine to always come back to. So when things do change and the landscape changes and the work and the job and the responsibility and the priority changes, at least you still have a sense of like who you are creatively yourself. And then based on where you're put and what your responsibility is, you can then bring that and inject that back into this new space that you've been put in.
I mean, that's how I see it unfold nonstop too. It's, and I think relate so heavily, and I think that's our longevity and or our value, and I'm and it's funny because I'm as you were saying that that was coming coagulating for me, and I'm looking at the chat, and I don't know everybody in here, but like
Yeah.
that's exactly why and how I know and would hire, or if I were a client, or any which way, any one of our friends that are on the chat, like I know exactly who they are because their personalities are out there, and I know exactly their skill set. I couldn't even think of any project from anybody, and it doesn't matter. I just know their identity is so clear, and I say that because
Strong. Yeah.
it's already there. In most cases, it's just kind of taking ownership and pride in it too. I think sometimes we think it's a complete rebuild of our identity, and sometimes maybe it is, but 90% of the time it isn't. It's just like owning it.
It's been there all along.
Yeah,
and it's
so
honestly like really tapping into it, right? When it comes to like what you care about.
Yeah, I think there's sometimes with creatives, there's this thing to kind of guard and armor and shield ourselves, but it's like, no, like loud and proud, guys.
Yeah. And also just knowing like what you care about beneath the work, besides the work and beneath the work. Like, what do I actually
I was
care
hoping
about?
we would come to that, like with this, because you touched on that in your talk of like, and we don't need to, it's not the answer, but it's like, who are we besides our title? I think it's a really nice way to kind of wrap this up.
Yeah. It's like and sometimes that takes sitting in silence a little bit, and takes sometimes what's happening now. And I think it's a very valuable thing, because we can all just keep going, but maybe this is a little bit of a like look in the mirror moment and reflect and be like, what do I have of value to add, right? Beyond just execution. And I really care about this, and I'm paying attention to these things. And maybe there'll be patterns that we notice in our own world, our own life, that we're then able to put out there.
I mean, it doubles too, as some of you said earlier, because once you step away from that to even examine that, then you come back to it with some amount of clarity. And which is everything. Yeah,
definitely. And PJ, this was good.
It's a good one.
Yeah,
it's a good one. Yeah.
I've enjoyed
as hoped for, So, well, definitely thanks everybody in the chat, and
thanks for hanging out. And it definitely went later than what we thought it was going to be, but appreciate the questions and all of the comments and everyone that's sort of still hung with the extra hour. And it's been nice to be able to interrogate you a little bit, PJ. I was on the hot seat last month, so
I know. Yeah. Well, wait till the sequel. I'll really line these questions up. It's
being able to pick your brain, and congratulations with everything that you've achieved, and thanks for bringing people together. Like, as we were saying, I think there's a bit of a lack of that now, and there's a need for people to come together in a space and be able to like hear just from people's experiences, and that we're not alone in this. There's a lot happening.
We all think we are, and we're not, and that's every bit the goal is to just even if you don't have to say it, like just give someone a place to come hang out. We hear it over and over,
even if it's once a month. So looking forward to the next one next week. When is that? Is that on the 9th?
It is. New space. I haven't even been over there yet, but a new space in West LA. So it should be good.
Yeah. Nice.
It's Hector. We have no idea what's coming ever. I'm not even gonna.
I cannot wait.
No. There might be a flying circus for all I know. I'm not even. I know not to even wonder.
This guy's a genius. Well, I'll see you then. It won't be too long, and we'll catch up. And I'll have some questions prepared for him next week.
Nice.
Yeah. Cheers.
All right, guys. Cheers.
All right. Thanks, everyone.